Hello and welcome. I'm Ashley and this is Beauty Biography. Every week on Friday, we explore the life of one iconic beauty while creating an inspired makeup look. It's my love of 90s A&E biographies meets my love of makeup and looking really bomb pretty. It's a real good time for me, and if it sounds like a real good time for you, well then be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Also, hit the subscribe button. That way, when I release a new beauty biography every Friday, you'll see it in your YouTube subscription feed. Today's episode has been highly requested ever since, actually even before I started doing beauty biography. I used to get comments requesting that I do a Marilyn Monroe inspired makeup look, and I have been dying to cover Marilyn, but I knew I had to do it right because it's a lot of pressure. Marilyn Monroe is point blank period the greatest Hollywood legend of all time. I grew up watching old movies with my parents, and a lot of my love for old Hollywood comes from that, and it's just like baked in. It's very nostalgic for me. We loved to watch old movies together on weekend nights. That was like a family event. We still do it to this day, and it's very near and dear to my heart. No leading lady was more revered in our home than Marilyn Monroe. She was the gold standard of what beauty was. She had gorgeous blonde hair. She was curvy. She didn't take herself too seriously in a lot of the movies that we watched. So I feel a lot of pressure to do Marilyn justice. So just know this video is probably gonna be pretty long, and I am dedicating it to the biggest Marilyn Monroe fan that I know, the man that literally has a framed Marilyn Monroe stamp collection, my dad. All right, let's begin. Marilyn Monroe was born Norma Jean Mortensen on June 1st, 1926 in Los Angeles, California. So she's a Gemini, and she displayed a lot of the very positive traits that are associated with Geminis, like adaptability, charisma, curiosity, but she also displayed one of the less positive traits of Geminis, which is inconsistency. Although I would argue this has a lot more to do with her childhood than it does with her sun sign. You'll see what I mean here in a moment. I had always heard that Marilyn Monroe's birth name was Norma Jean Baker, so I was a little bit confused when I found out that she was actually born Norma Jean Mortensen. The explanation behind this is a little complicated, so stick with me here. We're going to go through her mother's life to kind of understand how the world looks when Marilyn comes into it. Marilyn's mother was named Gladys Pearl, and Gladys had several last names throughout her life. She had been born as Gladys Pearl Monroe, which is where Marilyn will later get, or Norma Jean at this time, will later get her stage name. When Gladys Pearl was 15, her parents married her off to a man named John Newton Baker. This is when Gladys becomes Gladys Pearl Baker. Now, John Newton Baker was he's a real piece of crap. He was very abusive towards Gladys, and he was actually 9 years older than her, so there was definitely a bit of like a power imbalance there, because she's 15 when they marry and he's 24, so not ideal. Gladys has 2 children with John, and after they've had 2 children, at some point she finally decides to divorce him. She leaves him, she gets a divorce, and in the custody battle during the divorce, she is awarded sole custody of their 2 children. However, John has other plans, and he kidnaps their 2 children and takes them with him to Kentucky. So Gladys went on to marry a man named Martin Edward Mortensen. This marriage only lasts a few months, but it takes them years, like over 5 years, to finalize this divorce. And although the divorce is finalized by the time that Gladys gives birth to Norma Jean, her last name is still Mortensen at the time, so Norma Jean is born with the surname Mortensen. Gladys was a single mom when she gave birth to Norma Jean, and Norma Jean / Marilyn never does find out for sure who her father is. Gladys gave her a name of a man who later will become a film producer, but Marilyn's never able to confirm whether that man was her father or not. So Marilyn, no one's sure to this day who her father actually was. And throughout Marilyn's life as Norma Jean, she will more often use the name Norma Jean Baker than she uses the name Norma Jean Mortensen. So that's why sometimes people will refer to her as Norma Jean Baker rather than Norma Jean Mortensen, because she herself used that name more frequently than she used her actual birth name. Although Norma Jean comes as a bit of a surprise to Gladys, she's really, really excited to have Norma Jean. She was working as a film cutter at a film studio before she gave birth to Norma Jean. And after giving birth, she moves with Norma Jean to a farm in a little like farming town outside of LA to live with a couple named Albert and Ida Bolander. Gladys stays with Norma Jean and the Bolanders for the first 6 months of Norma Jean's life. But after taking 6 months off, she's out of money and she needs to go back to LA to work to earn money to support herself and to support Norma Jean. So she has to go back to LA. She leaves Norma Jean with the Bolanders, which is like really, really sad to have to leave your 6-month-old baby and go work in a different town. That is horrifying. Gladys would visit Norma Jean on the weekends though, and in the summer of 1933, when Norma Jean is 7 years old, Gladys has saved up enough money that she's able to put a down payment on a small home in Hollywood. So she's able to get this home, she gets a loan, she gets this small home, and she moves Norma Jean to live with her in Hollywood. They live there along with a couple named the Atkinsons who rent a room from Gladys, and this is how Gladys is able to help pay her mortgage, is with these renters who are living in the home with them. This bliss is short-lived though, and about 6 months into this living arrangement, Gladys has a mental breakdown. Gladys suffered from paranoid schizophrenia, and at this time, it was not as readily diagnosed or treated as it is today, and she just was not able to get the support she needed. I mean, can you imagine you're a single parent with a small child, a mortgage, you've been separated from your child for like 7 years, only seeing her on the weekend, you have paranoid schizophrenia, you've already lost 2 children to an abusive ex. Like Gladys just, I mean, she had it rough and she just didn't have the resources to support herself. So, mentally speaking. So she has a breakdown. She is admitted to a psychiatric hospital and she will be in and out of psychiatric hospitals for the rest of her life. So Norma Jean's mom goes to the psychiatric hospital and Norma Jean continues to live in her mom's house with the Atkinsons, the couple who were renting a room from her mother. She continues to live with them for about 1.5 years. And during this time, the husband, George Atkinson, abuses Norma Jean, which I have a lot of words for people who hurt children, and I would like to use some of those strong words right now, but today is a holy day, so I'm just going to pray for the Lord to quiet my tongue and leave it at that. No, I'm not. What a sick... Yes, I mouthed that. In case you have kids, I don't want them to hear it. I have a kid, so I don't want her to hear those words. Norma Jean had always been a shy little girl, but this abuse caused her to withdraw even more, and she ended up developing a stutter. Someone somehow steps in and she gets taken away from the Atkinsons and sent to live at the Los Angeles Orphans Home. This is described by most accounts as being, pretty nice as far as orphanages go, but Norma Jean obviously still felt very abandoned. I mean, she was very young. There's no way she could grasp the concept of what was going on with her mother. That was definitely taken as abandonment. There's no way a child could not take that as abandonment. In the summer of 1937, when Marilyn is 11 years old, her mom's friend, Grace Goddard, gets custody of her. She's named her legal guardian. And so Norma Jean goes to live with Grace and Grace's husband, Doc, which great, right? Except that Doc Goddard is another predator. And yes, I'm calling you out, Doc Goddard, because I think that predators should have their names dragged through the mud like the scum that they are. I hope you are enjoying hell, sir. My skin is peeling because of my retinol, and it's like, seriously, could you have picked a worse time? I am trying to drag child predators right now. After only a few months of living with the Goddards, someone, thank God, gets Norma Jean out of there, and she goes to a series of foster homes that for the most part are quite nice. She lives with one elderly lady for an extended period of time, and this seems to work out well for her. So she gets a nice stretch of some good people finally. So during these turbulent years of the 1930s in Marilyn's childhood, she begins to get her dream of becoming an actress. She said that her foster parents would often send her to the movies to kind of like get her out of their hair. And she would sit in the front row, and she was just enamored with the glamour and the romance. And it's during this time that she will see kind of her ultimate idol on screen, Jean Harlow. She admired Jean Harlow a lot, and Jean Harlow is going to be a pretty big influence on her career later. When Norma Jean was 15 years old, she met James Doherty, and around the same time, she has to go back to live with the Goddards. Why? The Goddards, though, are wanting to move back to their native West Virginia. And finally, someone's looking out for Marilyn because the laws of California forbid them from taking Marilyn out of the state. So since they're going to be going out of state to live, Marilyn has basically three choices. She can either find a new foster family, she can go back to the orphanage, or she can get married. Given these choices and the fact that James Doherty is a genuinely nice guy, marriage is the best choice here. So in June of 1942, just a few weeks after Norma Jean turns 16, she marries the 21-year-old James Doherty. I watched an interview with James Doherty. I mean, he's an old man by the time he does this interview, and he's like a nice guy. This was a genuinely nice person. He speaks only highly of her in the interview. He talks about how she was a good cook and that she always kept the house very tidy. And he speaks very, with just a lot of empathy for her and what she had gone through. He tells a story about how she thought this one guy was her dad, and she calls the guy and he basically blows her off. And James Doherty is like, you know what? He missed a heck of a chance because she was a good person. So he's a nice guy, because when you think about it, like, this guy could have like dined out on being Marilyn Monroe's first husband for years, and he really didn't. He only ever spoke very highly of her, which I think is very nice. And it's really good that she had a nice person during this pivotal time in her life, because she deserved it, number one. And number two, if this marriage would have gone differently, we probably never would have met Marilyn Monroe. And I say this because about 2 years into their marriage, almost 2 years into their marriage, Marilyn's 18, James is 23, and he has joined the Merchant Marines. We're in the middle of World War II at this point, and he is deployed to do an almost 2-year tour in the Pacific. Now, once he knows that he's going, Norma Jean is really adamant that she wants them to have a baby. She's like, let's try for a baby. I want a baby, because she's gone through so much abandonment. And in her mind, she's thinking, well, if I have a baby and you don't come back, at least I won't be alone. A lesser man than James probably would have been like, you know what? That's probably a good idea. Like, let's have a baby. That way she can't, try to step out on me while I'm gone or leave me. But he didn't. He told her, you're too young. You're only 18 years old. Let's talk about this when I get back. You're still so young. Let's wait. Thank you, James, because imagine that. If they would have had a baby, we would never have met Marilyn Monroe. There's just no way. I mean, the stars really have to align to make a star like Marilyn Monroe. If any one thing, especially having a baby, had been different, we'd have never known her. While James is deployed, Norma Jean starts working in a munitions plant, and she's discovered by a photographer who ends up taking, they call them cheesecake photos. They're basically like cheesy pinup photos, I guess, that are meant to motivate the troops or boost morale is the term they used. Boost morale, okay. Seems like a weird concept to me. I'm not sure how that would boost your morale. Like, oh, I'm in a war zone. Let me look at this picture of a pretty... I guess. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm not a man. I just don't get it. Like, if I was in danger, the last thing I would want to look at it is a picture of like a dude without a shirt on. Like, what is that going to do for me? Is that going to protect me? No. Anyway, by June of 1945, Norma Jean has signed with the Blue Book modeling agency, and she has quit her job at the munitions plant. She's like, no more of this. I am here. I'm in show business now. She begins appearing on magazine covers and spreads. And James, I mean, he actually sees this. He tells a story that like he's somewhere at a port or a base or something like that, and he sees Norma Jean on the cover of this magazine, and he tells the guys with him, like, that's my wife. And they basically are like, oh yeah, sure, that's your wife, James. Okay. He's not upset that she's, posing on these magazines or anything like that, but he does write to her and tell her, when I get home, you're going to have to quit all this and be a housewife. Like, this is not going to work out, Norma Jean. You need to, temper your expectations. Norma Jean does not want to temper her expectations. She's gotten a taste of admiration, which she's longed for her whole life. I mean, she's been abandoned, and the admiration she's getting modeling, that feels like love to her. And that attention is something she obviously wants. It's filling a kind of void there. So Norma Jean is not ready to give this up. And she actually decides, you know what? No, if I have to choose between being your wife and this career path that I'm on, I'm going to choose my career path. So she ends up sending James a Dear John letter, which if you didn't know is just like, it's a breakup letter. James and Norma Jean remain legally married until James gets back from his tour and can sign the divorce papers in person. And again, he only ever speaks very highly of her. Norma Jean is ready to transition from modeling to acting. So she convinces her management company to get her a screen test with 20th Century Fox. They arrange it. 20th Century Fox, I mean, they're not super impressed, but it's good enough for them to give her a 6-month contract for $100 a week, which in today's money is about $1,300. It's at this time that Norma Jean adopts the stage name Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn's first film appearance is in the movie Scudda-hoo, Scudda-hey. Yes, that was the name of a movie. The 40s were a different time. I know there are no small roles, only small actors, but my elementary school drama teacher hated that expression, and she was a saint, and she was right, because this role is tiny. Marilyn appears on screen for like 2 seconds maybe, and she waves hi to June Haver and a very young child actor named Natalie Wood. Fox extends Marilyn's contract from 6 months to 1 year before they release her from her contract in August of 1947 because they don't think she has much of a future. Boy, are they wrong. Marilyn is not discouraged though. She goes back to modeling and she begins a friends with benefits relationship with a Fox executive named Joseph Skank. Joseph Skank is friends with Harry Cohn. Anyone remember Harry Cohn? Good old Harry Cohn made an appearance in the very first beauty biography I did, covering Rita Hayworth, and boy, did he suck. Anyway, Marilyn's friend convinces Harry Cohn to give Marilyn a chance, and she signs with Columbia Pictures in March of 1948. Funny enough, at Columbia, their first order of business with Marilyn is to get her a Hollywood makeover, and they model this makeover after the one that they did with Rita Hayworth. So Marilyn goes through a couple plastic surgeries to thin down her nose and to correct an overbite. They also dye her hair, except rather than Rita Hayworth's red, they go with Jean Harlow blonde. Hair is Harlow gold. Clap, clap, clap. This extreme makeover actually represents the bulk of Marilyn's time with Columbia because she only makes one film with them as part of her contract with them, and that is the film Ladies of the Chorus. The film is not much of a hit, but Marilyn has a great screen presence in it, and she looks gorgeous, of course. Her deal with Columbia ends and Marilyn is without an acting contract. So she goes back to modeling to pay her bills, and she actually does a nude calendar photo shoot. She needed money. I don't think most of these actresses back then that were posing nude were doing it just for the art of nudity. They needed money to eat. During this period of time where she is between acting contracts, Marilyn begins an affair with Johnny Hyde, the vice president of the William Morris Agency, which is like a huge talent agency in Hollywood. Through Johnny, Marilyn will get the role that leads to her big break. I have done enough of these beauty biographies at this point that I've seen this pattern where there seems to always be a film in the career of each of these leading ladies that like sets them up for a break. The film itself is not the one that makes them a household name, but it's the film that sets them up to get that big role. It's kind of like volleyball where, you know, like someone has to set the ball before you spike the ball. I think that's correct. My entire knowledge of volleyball comes from the one semester in middle school where we played volleyball, and my coach, my gym coach, Coach Brown, that's right, I remember your name, sir. Not that you're ever going to watch this, but I remember your name, sir. He gave me a B because I had a broken arm, so I couldn't really participate. Luckily, my lack of athleticism did not prevent me from becoming extremely successful and happy in life, so joke's on you, sir. Johnny Hyde sets Marilyn up with a role in the Bette Davis-led film All About Eve, and while Marilyn's part is quite small, she leaves a huge impression. She gets like glowing mentions in some reviews about the film, and this really kind of like puts her on the radar of some of the studios. Her performance in All About Eve, as well as Johnny's talent as an agent, are enough to get her a second chance with 20th Century Fox. And in December of 1950, Hyde negotiates a second contract for Marilyn with Fox. It's for 7 years, which for her is like, yay. And again, will we ever learn why all these contracts were 7 years? I still don't know. Sadly, Johnny Hyde died of a heart attack only a few days after this deal was finalized, and this was really devastating to Marilyn because he really helped her a lot. In 1951, Marilyn appears in 3 films: As Young as You Feel, Love Nest, and Let's Make It Legal. The films are moderately popular, and although the roles are not like groundbreaking, like award-nominated performances, they do begin to win Marilyn a very healthy fan base. The next year, 1952, Marilyn has a very big year both professionally and personally. She stars in several successful films that kind of highlight her beauty and her sex appeal, but she also appears in the film Don't Bother to Knock. She stars as a deranged babysitter, and this is her most dramatic and challenging role up to this point. She gets really great reviews for the film from critics, and she also stars that year in the film Monkey Business opposite Ginger Rogers and Cary Grant. This film puts Marilyn well on her way to becoming a household name. In her personal life, Marilyn begins a relationship that is going to last in one form or another until her death. She begins dating Joe DiMaggio, who is a recently retired baseball legend of the New York Yankees. I love the New York Yankees. I love baseball. It's the only sport I care about, and that is the only team I care about. And Joe DiMaggio is where it's at. He had just recently retired when they started dating. He had 9 World Series titles, 13 All-Star Game appearances. He had been the American League MVP 3 times, and he held a hitting streak record that still stands to this day. And fun fact, that hitting streak ended on my birthday in 1941. So Joe and Marilyn begin dating, and Marilyn really likes that Joe is very family-oriented and he is not in show business. This relationship gets a ton of publicity because he is a living legend already and her star is on the rise. So this is a pretty big deal in the media, and the media becomes obsessed with them. The publicity around the relationship also helps with Marilyn's rising star because she's getting a lot of attention. So this helps her career a good bit as well. And in 1953, Marilyn stars in the film Niagara, which is another big film for her career. Fox launches this huge publicity tour, and it's now official. Marilyn Monroe she's not just a starlet anymore. She is a star. So, what's next for Marilyn? Oh, I don't know, just a little film called Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. If you have never seen the film Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, then you need to get on it. It's Marilyn Monroe, it's Jane Russell. They're the perfect duo. The movie is everything there is to love about old Hollywood. It is a literal classic. And this is the movie that will give us the iconic image of Marilyn Monroe dressed in a pink strapless gown covered in diamonds, performing the legendary song, Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. Can we just pause for a moment to point out, like, I'm gonna duck out of here so you can see, look at my flowers. These were my Valentine's Day flowers. They're like the perfect shade of pink for this video because they almost perfectly match the gown in that video. My husband did not know that he was doing that, but it worked out perfectly. Oh, now you can only see flowers and not my face. Okay, fixed it. Oh, no, not yet. Now fixed it. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes is a huge success, and Jane Russell and Marilyn Monroe get to put their hand and footprints in the cement at Grauman's Chinese Theater as a result of the success of this film. Marilyn Monroe is now 26 years old, and she is the biggest star in the world. Everyone loves her, but they are not prepared for the shock they experience when her nude photos from that calendar reappear in the very first issue of Playboy. Now, if this had been handled differently, who knows what would have happened. But Marilyn was very forthcoming and honest about it. She made jokes about it. And because she didn't hide from it, she didn't act ashamed, she just confronted it head on, it just ended up being like a little blip. I mean, it made her more of a star because everyone was talking about it, and then she handles it perfectly with honesty and candor, and there you go. She's just an even bigger star. Something that probably could have sunk her career if she would have let it. It just makes her stronger. In November of 1953, the film How to Marry a Millionaire is released, and this is another classic. Marilyn stars opposite Lauren Bacall and Betty Grable. The film is a huge success, but Marilyn doesn't love the fact that this is yet another film where she's kind of playing a dumb blonde gold digger. She plays the roles fantastically. I mean, she's a fantastic comedic actress, but she wants more serious dramatic roles, and behind the scenes she's been asking the executives at Fox for these more dramatic, serious roles, and they're not listening to her. They keep putting her in roles where she feels like she's the butt of the joke, and she decides, you know what, enough is enough. So they send her the script for a film called The Girl in Pink Tights. They've already been advertising and promoting that she's going to star in this film, and she reads the script, she doesn't like it, and she sends them a telegram that's like, sorry, I just don't like it. I'm not doing this. She refuses to appear in the film, and so they suspend her without pay. Marilyn figures, well, since I'm suspended without pay, I might as well go spend some more time with my long-term boyfriend, just Mr. Joe DiMaggio. Marilyn and Joe have been dating for about 2 years when they decide to marry in January of 1954. They want just a small, civil, private ceremony at the San Francisco, City Hall. But the media catches wind of it and are like, no, there's no way this is going to be low-key. The news breaks. It's a huge deal. The press dub their marriage the marriage of the century, and they hound the lovebirds. This is the biggest story going on at this time. Marilyn and Joe go to Japan for their honeymoon. Baseball has become a huge thing in Japan after World War II. So they go there. Joe makes some appearances for, I guess, baseball stuff. And Marilyn goes over to Korea to entertain some of the American troops that are fighting in the Korean War. She does 10 performances in 2 days for the GIs, and they go nuts for her. There's hundreds of thousands of soldiers just screaming their heads off like it's Beatlemania over Marilyn Monroe. They're obsessed. They're in love. She is a huge star, and it's kind of one of the first times that she sees the magnitude of the star that she is at this point. Because Marilyn is getting so much press attention for her marriage and for this 2-day little tour she does in Korea, 20th Century Fox realizes, you know what, we should probably try to make nice with Marilyn because she's a big deal and we don't want to miss out here. So her suspension is lifted, and in September of 1954, she begins filming one of her most iconic roles, The 7-Year Itch. The 7-Year Itch was based on a play, and the premise of this movie, if you haven't seen it, is there's this man who's been married for 7 years, and hence the title of the film. The 7-Year Itch is like he's been married for about 7 years and he kind of, I guess, starts to itch for like something different. So he attempts to begin an affair with his downstairs neighbor, who is played by Marilyn Monroe. And Marilyn Monroe's character, who is not named throughout the film, she is kind of oblivious to his advances because, again, it's kind of the dumb blonde role. She's oblivious that he's trying to start an affair with her, and this leads to like a lot of comic mishaps. This film solidifies Marilyn's place in American pop culture in a couple ways. There's, the infamous dress blowing up scene that we're going to get to in a minute. But there's also another moment in the film where Tom Uhl, the leading man of this film, is talking to his friend and he says, "I can explain it all. I can explain the blonde in the kitchen." And his friend says, "What blonde in the kitchen?" And he replies, "Wouldn't you like to know? Maybe it's Marilyn Monroe." Which is very meta, right? Because, it's Marilyn Monroe is the actress playing this character that he's trying to have an affair with. But since she's never named, it kind of takes on this life of like, is it Marilyn Monroe? Is this just the concept of Marilyn Monroe? It blurs the line between reality and art. So it's like they're kind of playing into this idea that Marilyn is just this concept. She, is not also a person who is separate from the parts that she's playing. They're kind of playing into this idea that Marilyn, the human, and Marilyn, the, sex goddess on their screen are the same person, which is very true to life because at this point, the just overall star power of Marilyn Monroe has kind of eclipsed the human being Norma Jean. The film does also feature the infamous scene of Marilyn in the white dress standing over the subway grate with her dress blowing up. And filming this scene took several hours, and there were thousands of people just watching because it was filmed on the streets of New York. One of those people, quite unfortunately, was Marilyn's husband, Joe DiMaggio. And let me tell you what, he was not a really big fan of this moment. He really just wanted a family, and at this point, he was, just very super jealous and unhappy about thousands of people looking at his wife on the streets of New York. But it also kind of spoke to a deeper problem, which was she was this sex symbol overall, not even just in that one moment, just in culture at this time. And it was so huge that I think he felt just overwhelmed and, again, very jealous and not really pleased with this. He wanted a family, he wanted her to be a wife, and obviously that just was not what was going on. So in October of 1954, Marilyn Monroe files for divorce from Joe DiMaggio, and some of Marilyn's friends allude or imply that 20th Century Fox played a pretty big part in dissolving this marriage, that basically they saw that, things were very unhealthy and they were very concerned that if Marilyn were to stay in this marriage, it was going to affect her career and obviously their bottom line, which kind of makes sense because they have her lawyer march her out of this house and they give this big press conference where Marilyn is like obviously distraught. And I'm like, why are you guys making her have a press conference about this? This is horrible. Like, give the woman some privacy. So Joe and Marilyn divorce. Fox continues to give Marilyn these dumb blonde roles that she doesn't want. And she finally, again, refuses another one of these films that she doesn't want to make. And Fox suspends her yet again. During the suspension, Marilyn goes to the actor's studio in New York City to learn, to train. If you've ever seen the show Inside the Actor's Studio, this is the same actor's studio. She goes there. She's not allowed to like participate for like the first 8 months or so that she's there. She can just observe, but she really wants to learn. She wants to be taken seriously. She feels like she's just a joke to people. She feels like she's always the butt of the joke. No one's taking her seriously as an actress, and she wants to hone her craft. She wants to be a talented actress who is taken seriously, who is nominated for awards, who gets, you know, the gritty, dramatic roles. She wants that. So she goes, she sits, she observes, and she takes this very seriously. Marilyn is trying to learn the method, as in method acting, and this type of acting requires a lot of personal introspection, which can be quite difficult when you're someone who's had as traumatizing a life as Marilyn has had. So while doing all this introspection, it kind of brings up a lot of painful feelings for Marilyn, but she also makes a couple really good friends while they're in New York that were really supportive of her and supportive of her desire to be a more serious actress. While she's in New York at the Actors Studio, Marilyn meets and begins dating the playwright Arthur Miller. He's perhaps most well known for writing the play Death of a Salesman. 20th Century Fox. They decide to make nice with Marilyn by renegotiating her contract. And in this renegotiation, they give her a couple things that she had been wanting for a long time. Those two big things are script approval and director approval, because up to this point in her contract, she had no say over what films she made. If they gave her a script and a director, it didn't matter if she hated that script and hated that director, that was what she was legally bound to do. So they finally give her a little bit of creative control and autonomy over her own career. Marilyn returns to Hollywood with this shiny new contract, and she makes the film Bus Stop, which sees Marilyn in the exact kind of dramatic role that she has been wanting to play. Her performance is critically acclaimed, and she is nominated for a Golden Globe, but because the role, she's doing method acting for this role, it does bring up some feelings of like loneliness and abandonment, and Marilyn starts to begin to experience some insomnia. On July 1st, 1956, Marilyn marries Arthur Miller, and sadly, 1 month after they are married, Marilyn experiences a miscarriage. This is extremely depressing for her. She convinces herself that the miscarriage is her fault and that it's because, you know, maybe because she slept around when she was younger, things like that. Like, she's convinced herself that it's her fault, which no, that's internalized misogyny. That is not the truth talking. Again, this sends Marilyn into a bout of depression, and that depression is made even worse by her anxiety that she's going to become like her mother and be institutionalized. That weighs heavy on her, seeing what her mother has gone through her whole life, because while they're not super close, Marilyn does remain in contact with her mother, and actually upon her death, she does leave her mother a good chunk of change to take care of herself. So Marilyn knows at this point kind of what her mother has gone through with mental illness. So her own mental illness struggle really gives her a lot of anxiety because she doesn't want to end up in and out of psychiatric hospitals for the rest of her life, which is completely understandable. Marilyn takes an 18-month hiatus from work to try to get this under control, and during this time, she suffers from a second miscarriage and an ectopic pregnancy. These were most likely the result of endometriosis that she had, but nevertheless, it's really upsetting to Marilyn, who again blames herself and thinks that she has done something wrong and is being punished for it. Marilyn returns to work with the film Some Like It Hot. She thought it was like, okay, another dumb blonde role. She was initially not wanting to make the film, but her husband, Arthur Miller, he kind of talks her into it. And also the studio offers her 10% of the film's profits to sweeten the deal. So she says, you know what? All right, I'll make your movie. The film is now a classic, but it's also legendary for being a disaster to film. Marilyn was late all the time. She demanded dozens of retakes. She didn't know her lines and had to put them on cue cards. She would ask the director, Billy Wilder, to alter some of her scenes, and when he wouldn't, she was often accused of like purposely messing up the scenes so that they would have to redo them the way she wanted to do them. All that being said, in the end, Marilyn's performance is fantastic and she wins a Golden Globe for Best Actress. While her Golden Globe is a highlight of her career, Marilyn's personal life is not going as well. She's depressed and she's having a lot of insomnia. So her doctors prescribe her barbiturates to help her sleep, but then obviously if you take a bunch of barbiturates to go to sleep, you're probably not going to wake up feeling fresh as a daisy. So when Marilyn complains that she's constantly fatigued during the day, they give her uppers. So she's taking barbiturates to sleep at night, and she's taking uppers and stimulants to keep her awake during the day. This is a recipe for disaster. Marilyn's last completed film is The Misfits. Her husband, Arthur Miller, writes this film with her in mind. Filming is difficult because both Marilyn and her co-star Montgomery Clift were having a lot of substance abuse issues. This leads to a lot of difficulty with filming, a lot of tardiness, a lot of missed lines. Clark Gable actually said quite famously that Marilyn's tardiness was going to give him a heart attack, and then when Clark Gable actually does die of a heart attack a few weeks after filming wraps, Marilyn feels really terrible and really responsible. She feels responsible for a lot of things she should not feel responsible. It's actually really sad. The film The Misfits gets good reviews, but it is a box office dud, and it also marks the end of Marilyn and Arthur's marriage. I'm assuming that, probably not the best working environment, that you and your husband are making a film together and you're, really dependent on drugs, and it's just a mess. It's a mess. So obviously it was a huge strain on their marriage and they end up getting a divorce. Following this divorce, Marilyn's depression gets a lot worse, and also she gets a lot of anxiety. And to make matters only worse, her psychiatrist has her admitted to a psychiatric hospital. This is devastating to Marilyn and maybe not the best place for her to recover, because she's deathly afraid that she's going to end up like her mother. So when she's institutionalized, that just almost validates this fear for her. So she is not recovering well in the psychiatric hospital. She's having a meltdown over this. And luckily, Joe DiMaggio comes to the rescue. He comes and gets her out of the psychiatric hospital and takes her with him. He's like, yeah, this is not gonna happen. Not today, sir. At this point, Marilyn is in a very fragile place. She goes on vacation with Joe DiMaggio. He's trying to keep her away from the press. He's trying to keep her away from anyone that he thinks is a bad influence on her, anyone that, might be encouraging her to, be using the pills, anyone that he feels is stressful to her or, is connected to Hollywood. He wants to keep them away from her because he wants her to recover. And he feels that the best way for her to recover is away from all these people in Hollywood. It's around this time that it's suspected that Marilyn began her affair with John F. Kennedy, which is pretty much confirmed. I wasn't sure that it was confirmed. I kind of always thought, oh, that was just a rumor. It's pretty much confirmed, but it wasn't this big dramatic love affair or anything like that. It was a pretty casual affair where they just, happened to see each other. Sometimes they had mutual friends and, sometimes they would see each other and rendezvous, if you will. It wasn't this big dramatic, in love with each other, leave your wife. It wasn't anything like that. Joe DiMaggio is actually very upset about this, and he was very angry at the friends of hers that introduced her to JFK because he felt, and he's not completely wrong, that most women who got mixed up with the Kennedys, they didn't come out better for it, that's for sure. In April of 1962, Marilyn began filming Something's Got to Give opposite Dean Martin. It is while making this film that she takes a break from filming to fly to New York City on May 19th, the same year, for a birthday celebration for President John F. Kennedy. And this is where we get the infamous, very cringy, "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" video. Have you ever seen that video? Have you ever actually watched it? You guys, it is so cringy and awkward and uncomfortable to watch. Marilyn's on a ton of barbiturates at the time. She had had a bunch of champagne, and it's just, her friends actually described it as being almost like a parody or a caricature of herself. It's one of those moments where you can tell someone is not in a good place. She was not in a good place. Marilyn goes back to filming Something's Gotta Give, and yeah, still not in a good place. She's forgetting her lines. She's showing up late. She a lot of times doesn't show up at all. Poor Dean Martin is such a gentleman. I watched all of these like unedited clips that they still have of this footage where she's just basically like forgetting her lines over and over again. And poor Dean Martin is just sitting there being so lovely to her and is just like trying to give her her line, and he doesn't get frustrated, at least not any of the footage that I've seen. A lot of times when he was filming his lines, they would have to have someone else there like giving Marilyn's lines to him because she wasn't even there. By June 7th of that year, there had been 30 filming days, and Marilyn had been present for like 13 of them. So, I mean, that's less than half. Fox is kind of done with it. So they fire Marilyn and they sue her for damages for like $750,000, which I didn't look up how much that would be, but that'd have to be a lot of money today. So Marilyn is without work at this point, and she is spiraling. She is exhibiting a lot of like very red flags in her behavior. She's acting very manically. She is constantly on the phone calling old friends, old lovers, anyone that will listen. She talks a lot. She seems very incoherent at times, and she is completely dependent on a cocktail of prescription drugs at this point. Fox has fired her and is suing her, and a lot of people often think, oh, this is, you know, what's going to lead to her death. But Fox actually kind of does their best to repair the relationship with Marilyn. They reach a new deal with her for a new contract. They're going to finish filming Something's Got to Give. They're going to give her a Jean Harlow biopic where she's going to play her childhood idol, Jean Harlow. So this has been sorted out before Marilyn passes away. This is not the cause of her death by any means. So Marilyn has repaired things with 20th Century Fox. They've made nice, all is good, excited about this Jean Harlow role. She tells a lot of her friends about it. However, on August 5th, 1962, it's about 3 a.m. in the morning, and Marilyn's housekeeper, Eunice, is staying over with Marilyn. She often stayed over with her. Like spent the night, and she wakes up around 3 a.m. and she just like has like this weird feeling that something's off. Like she wakes up, goes to the bathroom, and just, you know, you can tell when something's different. Most of us can. So she sees that the light is on. She can see the light coming from under Marilyn's bedroom door. So she sees that the light is on in Marilyn's room, and there's some accounts that she actually sees like the phone line going under Marilyn's door. I don't know if maybe Marilyn's phone wasn't in the room with her and she had to like take it from a different room. If you're very young, you probably don't remember a time when phones had cords, but they did. They used to have these little coil cords in my day. So Eunice goes to check on Marilyn. She tries to open the door and the door is locked. This obviously causes some concern for Eunice, and her first call, I kind of thought this was odd, but her first call is to Marilyn's psychiatrist. But it's not actually odd because Marilyn had been, you know, in a depressive manic cycle during this summer. So she was under the care of her psychiatrist, and that was who was prescribing her barbiturates and her stimulants and all of her, you know, things that they didn't help. Marilyn's psychiatrist rushes over and they break into Marilyn's room through the bedroom window. And when they get into the bedroom, they find Marilyn has passed away and is lying on her bed. Some accounts say that she had the phone in her hand. Some say she didn't. There's no way for us to know now. Again, she had been making a lot of phone calls, so it's completely possible and would really not have been very suspicious if she would have been on the phone. Marilyn is 36 years old at the time of her death. An autopsy and a toxicology analysis find that Marilyn's cause of death was, and I quote, acute barbiturate poisoning. I think it's important to get this right. Marilyn had struggled with depression, and she had intentionally overdosed several times in the past, but she would often call for help. So there are some thought that maybe she intentionally overdosed and then called for help. Regardless, her death was classified as a probable suicide, which is incredibly, incredibly sad. The world immediately begins mourning Marilyn, but they also begin a bunch of rumors, which I think is somewhat human nature because she's at the top of her star, really. I mean, she's huge, she's larger than life, and people want a better explanation than, you know what, this star that you thought was just so big and huge and nothing could be wrong in her life was incredibly depressed and had a lot of demons and a very traumatic life. People want a different explanation than that. But I think it does a disservice to her because, you know, there's just not some grand conspiracy here. There's just not. She had a very difficult life. She had a mental illness, and she had psychiatrists that really didn't help her the way they should have. Instead, they threw pills at her. There's nothing wrong with the proper psychiatric medicine, but she was not getting the proper psychiatric medicine and care. She just wasn't. Following Marilyn's death, Joe DiMaggio is devastated, but he jumps in very quickly to begin arranging Marilyn's funeral, and he bans anyone who is not a very close friend or a family member from attending Marilyn's funeral. He does not want Hollywood riffraff there. He blames these people in Hollywood, he blames them for not taking care of her. He blames them for introducing her to people he thought were not good for her and a lifestyle he felt was not good for her. And he doesn't blame them in a way of like, oh, you did this. He blames this in a way of, you know what, this lifestyle and this BS contributed to this. And he doesn't want it around Marilyn, and he doesn't want people who he doesn't think were good for her being at her funeral. Throughout his life, Joe DiMaggio was actually offered a lot of money to talk about his relationship with Marilyn, and he always refused. He did not make it a spectacle. To him, she was not Marilyn Monroe, the actress. She was a person that he cared about and loved. And for the rest of his life, he never remarried. He always had her on a pedestal. He adored her and admired her until the day that he died. And for 20 years, he would have a dozen roses delivered to her crypt 3 times a week. Marilyn overcame a lot to realize her success, but in many ways, she never truly felt that she arrived. She never was able to fully heal the wounds of her childhood, the feelings of inadequacy or abandonment or I'm not good enough and that's why someone left. She never felt like she was good enough. She never felt that she was respected. She never felt like she actually made it. However, most of Marilyn's co-stars felt very differently. Laurence Olivier once described Marilyn Monroe as a brilliant comedian and an extremely skilled actress. I mean, who cares what anyone else thinks about you if Laurence Olivier thinks that highly of you? There's truly no way to summarize the legacy of Marilyn Monroe. Her legend is rivaled by very few. I cannot think of anyone in pop culture who is more legendary than Marilyn Monroe. She has transcended the constraints of time, space even, if you will. She is a timeless icon. And it seems that with each decade that passes, we kind of reevaluate her place in our culture and what her life and her stardom and her private struggles say about us as a species, as a culture. Marilyn is often studied by feminist scholars and scholars who are interested in gender studies, including Gloria Steinem and Lois Banner. I think Lois said it best when she said that Marilyn Monroe is the eternal shapeshifter. She is recreated by each generation, even each individual, to their own specifications. She truly is someone that evokes a lot of emotions in people: pity, envy, confidence. She just has this, there's no way to even put into words the lasting legacy and just the it that Marilyn Monroe possesses to this day. For me personally, there are very few people that can inspire the emotion in me that Marilyn Monroe can. I mean, as far as like people that I don't know, I've never met her, but I honestly can't remember a time that I didn't know who Marilyn Monroe was. And I have never met another single human being on this planet who has not heard of her. She is just an ever-present force of nature. I sure wish that I could have been her friend. I will probably now go listen to Elton John's Candle in the Wind and cry this makeup off because, you know, it's just so sad that the world was not able to give her the peace that she deserved, especially considering everything that she's given to the world and just the lasting legacy of her. Well, I hope I did my dad proud. I know this was a long one, folks, but I absolutely refused to cut out any of this information. I think it was important and pertinent, and I just wanted to do right by Marilyn. I thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me today. Let me know in the comments below, how did Marilyn Monroe impact you? Like, let me know. Like, you know, what do you think of her? Did she have a pretty, big impact on you the way that she has on me? Do you have any fun facts about her that maybe I missed? And as always, let me know as well, who would you like to see in the next beauty biography? Hopefully one that's shorter than this, because this was a lot of talking. I literally had to take my Invisalign out because I just could not continue to lisp with it in. We're here every Friday for Beauty Biography. I hope to see you next week. Until then, you take care of yourself. Bye.